Hello everybody and welcome, my name is Ryan and these are my 4 biggest reasons why I think you should be as excited as most of the content creator community is about the upcoming changes presented by the Firaxis feature workshop, a huge overhaul of Civ 7 that we've all been testing out. Trust me, this is a big one. We start with Civ Switching. As you may know, Civilization 7 has been working on a method of allowing you to not change your Civ when you go from age to age, which gives you the option of playing the same Civ for the entire game. What this essentially does is you can choose any age of the game, Antiquity, Exploration, or Modern, and play any Civ, regardless of whether or not that Civ actually belongs in that age. If it is supposed to be in that age, for instance Carthage in Antiquity, you play the Civ at the apex of its power, which effectively means it plays as before. Say you want to get a little bit ahistorical and choose America, which is a modern age civilization. Instead, you play the Civ as a time-tested version. It has a different ability, either scaled up or scaled down, depending on whether or not you're playing the Civ before or ahead of time. And it comes with whole new traditions and interesting abilities when you play the game. Take this game that I was playing on stream. We're on turn 20 at the Exploration age, but we're still playing as Carthage, who are before an Antiquity Civ. We retain the same ability, although our unique units, the Cavalry, the Colonist, neither of those could be used anymore. The Civ is out of time. Instead, we have a whole new civic tree that has scaled up versions of previous traditions, keeping them relevant for the rest of the game, and some of these are incredibly interesting. New traditions based on the type of civilization you're playing. So for instance, Carthage is a combination of military and economy. So we have an economy and a military tradition. And this new ability called syncretism, which when you unlock it, allows you to poach or borrow the unique unit or infrastructure of another Civ that you are related to in some way. In this game, for instance, I elected to steal the pirate unique infrastructure, the naval arsenal, the naval station, and the haven once completed. So in this game, even though we're exploration, we're still playing Carthage. We're still able to settle cities in distant lands with the Punic port, which is still buildable. And I have a whole bunch of new options to play with as well. You have this brilliant combination of the old and the scaled up new. Here is a second example. Exploration again, but this time we're playing Qing China, who are a modern Civ. We have a scaled down but still powerful version of their abilities, and again access to a whole new civic tree with related abilities, scaled down versions of modern age traditions, and the ability to poach units, just like before. Looking at a Civ like America really shows this off. Have a look at the abilities. 1 production on resources and gain 50 gold every time you improve a resource. This is their Antiquity ability. We click Exploration and you can see it goes up to 100 gold, Modern to 150, as well as production towards the Statue of Liberty. You can still change Civs. You can go backwards in time, you can go forwards in time. The flexibility is now there. From experience, I have found that this makes the age transition significantly less jarring, especially for players who want a consistent feel with how they're playing the game. But more importantly, if you want to play the same Civ through the whole game, you now can. Has it changed the fact that we still have 3 distinct ages? No, and I don't think that's going to change. So if you didn't like the idea of there being a split game into 3 distinct ages with 3 tech trees, 3 civic trees, well, this doesn't change that for you. But at least now, not only is the transition less jarring, but you can retain the same Civ, the same abilities, and the same strategy from age to age. And some Civs really do work out to be very stable. This is a fundamentally different approach, and generally speaking, the people that have playtested it, both creators and members of the public, have been incredibly positive about this. Is there still balancing to do? Yes, of course, but there are a lot of new abilities here, a lot of really cool things. And from my point of view, I'm excited about the fact that there seems to be so many more options with how to play Civ 7 through the ages of the game. It's really cool. Plus, some of the strategies I can see, well, they're quite powerful. The second aspect I would like to show off are the new victories, because this fundamentally changes the way you approach the game during all 3 ages. We still have the 4 separated aspects of the game as we did before: military, military, cultural, economic, and scientific, but no more do we have legacy paths. Instead, we now have a fundamentally similar victory that applies to all 4 ages of the game. They're all slightly changed and they're all more complicated, some more complicated than others. Military literally is about controlling the most settlements with extra points for conquered and different ideologically focused Civ settlements. Things apply in later ages. Cultural includes the accumulation of tourism that comes from all sorts of things, including wonders, unique improvements, relics, and the like. Economic is a constant race to build your GDP through the accumulation of resources, gold buildings, returned treasure. There's all sorts of ways you can push this. And rather than just rushing to space, the scientific tree now requires you to accumulate points throughout the game before, in the modern age, finally jettisoning to space. So how does this differ from legacy paths? Before, every age had a very similar thing that you needed to do. For instance, antiquity military just involved you getting 12 settlements. Culture and exploration, you had to use your religion to get relics. Once you played a couple of games, you realized that these really didn't change from game to game. Now, don't get me wrong, these victories don't change from game to game as well, but the difference now is that every single age contributes to the same victory. You can see in the cultural here, settling natural wonders, building wonders, creating unique improvements and buildings. All of these can be done at any point in the game, and the points ramp up as you go later and later, but it rewards you for having a focus all the way through the game. The way you set up antiquity can massively help your victory in modern. They ramp up. You get more and more and more points the longer the game goes on. And interestingly, this applies to how you win as well. This game is currently very early on in exploration, in the first half of exploration. And whilst we are currently winning the economic pathway, as we can see here, if we want to win the game before 50% age progress in exploration, we need to have 9 times the level of score of the next player, which is Isabella, which means we need 12,000 points. We only have 2,600. No chance. We are nowhere near. But as the game goes on, these victories become easier and easier. For instance, with economic, this drops from 9 times to 6 times, and then 4 times, and then 2 times, and then 1.5 as the game gets later and later and later. And this applies to most of the victory paths. And with the points increasing as you go through the game, what you find is that the games become more and more competitive the later you get. Now, some people have not enjoyed the way that you can win the entire game in exploration, but from testing, as long as you've got the difficulty setting right, this is incredibly difficult to do. And if you have done it, you were clearly going to win the game anyway. You'd really run away with it. You might as well just press one more turn and play as long as you want at that point. Now, it makes modern much, much more interesting because suddenly the fact that I'm twice the score of Isabella, she doesn't care about this right now, but as we go through modern, well, she will, because eventually, once modern age hits 50%, I would win. Well, if I maintained my lead at 10 turns. Now, from experience, I found that this is incredibly focusing, and this Carthage game, I played from turn 1 with the idea of winning an economic victory. I have been building plentiful gold buildings, accumulating resources and applying them to my cities en masse. Trading and exploration, I then found treasure, built more gold, settled wider, and I've been rewarded with a slowly increasing economic lead. Sure, the old legacy paths still exist. Culture still gives you tourism for having relics. Economic still gives you points for returning treasure, but it's no longer the only thing you have to do. These feel so much more like the old Civilization 5 and Civilization 6 victory paths. And to people who wanted a return to Civ 5 and Civ 6 in how the game applies, I think this is going to be really appealing. Time will tell which victories are easier or harder to go for, or if balancing needs to happen. And I think the more playtesting that happens, the more idea we'll have. But so far, I really like them. Now let's talk about the third part of the game, triumphs. This is a new system that has been introduced alongside the new victory pathway and gives the player something to aim for during the ages that will either accelerate their victory or give them a step up in the next age. Now, whilst it's worth pointing out that quite a few of these triumphs haven't quite been implemented into this playtest yet, you can see the sort of things that we're going for, and quite a few of them are obtainable. Firstly, we have minor triumphs. These are smaller projects that give you instantaneous bonuses if you complete them. For instance, if I spend 25,000 gold worth of purchases in the age, I immediately immediately get 500 economic victory points. If I am the first player to circumnavigate the world, my fleet commanders gain +1 movement. And if I'm the first to build a university, I get +1 science on all of my specialists. These are the exploration triumphs. Antiquity is much more fleshed out. And you can see some really cool rewards such as 3 settlers, increased settlement limit, influence towards endeavors or sanctions. These remind me a huge amount of the sort of mini quests that you see not only in Civ 6 with the Eurekas and inspirations, but other games such as Endless Legends, Age of Wonders, quests that happen in the game that give you rewards. And the nice thing as well is that you can change these. There are different packs, some that are much more competitive, others that are based much more on the old legacy pathways. Minor triumphs generally are a huge triumph. I still think we need to see more. I'd like to see more variation. I'd like to see more options, but these are wonderful. Then you have major triumphs, which I'm not such a big fan of, but I do still like them. I think they're a good introduction into the game. I just think they need to be tweaked. These are bigger projects. Build 6 exploration age wonders. Become suzerain of 4 city-states. Ally with 4 leaders. These are much more difficult things to achieve. And instead of getting instantaneous bonuses, you now get a dedication for the next age. When we go from exploration to modern, we will be able to take 3 of those dedications across. This is the new version of the age transition. So no more buying endless attribute points. These are much harder to get now. So I find if you were to, for instance, earn 7 or 8 of the triumphs, you only get the benefit of 3, and you have to wait for the benefit anyway, so there's no point in doing it in the age. However, some of the abilities are insane. 4 culture and production on wonders, for instance, in modern would be absolutely brilliant in a city that has about 10 wonders built, which my capital currently has. I will never say no to +2 settlement limit, and say we were going for an economic victory, having +1 trade route capacity with all leaders is incredibly handy. So there is a lot to like about this, even though I think it needs to be tweaked. Between this and the new victory system, you will find that during an age, there is far more to do. And more importantly, there is no way you would be able to complete every single one of these triumphs in a game. They are too varied, too difficult. You would need to be an octopus pulling in every direction at once. It's just not viable. And that sort of scarcity, I think, is a huge improvement. And for my 4th and final point, I just wanted to bring to your attention some of the behind the scenes balancing changes that have happened that I think really do pull Civ 7 in a slightly different direction. Firstly, specialists. Now, specialists are population that have been popped onto urban districts that give you additional yields. Previously, a specialist by default is worth 2 science, 2 culture, and 50% of the adjacency of the buildings that they are stuck upon. This has now been changed. Let's 3 up a population and pop the specialist down. You'll actually see, oh look, on this tile, a specialist is worth nothing. 0. A specialist no longer has a base yield. No science, no culture. Instead, they now give 100% of the adjacency bonus of the building on the tile. So you can now see that because the observatory has 2 adjacency and the palace has 1 adjacency, we're getting 3 science and 1 culture. That is the full adjacency on that tile. Now, by default, this means that specialists are significantly worse than they were before at the beginning of the game. What it does mean, however, is that they can be worth a whole lot more. They are much more rewarding of a city that really focuses on adjacency. Look at this one. I have a single gold building here, a bazaar that is currently +6 adjacency because I have 2 wonders and 4 coastal tiles. The specialist is worth the whole 6 adjacency, 6 gold. And if I had a second gold building on that tile, it would be worth 12 gold. So yes, you don't have base yields, but you are hugely rewarded now. Specialists are much more difficult to use and, well, much more specialized. We see this as well in the way that the game is treating unique improvements. Let us take the monastery, for instance. This is given by a scientific city-state and beforehand was the meta. If you had monasteries, you won the game. It was as simple as that. It's worth 180 gold. Let me build one in this town. You can see that there are 2 places that I can build it. Bam, a lovely monastery. Now, let's try and build a second. Oh, it's not not 180. It is now 540. Unique improvements are now more expensive the more of them that you build in the same settlement. Now, it has to be the same settlement and the same type of unique improvement. If, for instance, I had a second type of unique improvement, such as the Shawnee or the Mississippian or the Persian unique improvements, it doesn't really matter what it is, that would not go up in cost, but you can no longer spam the same thing in the same settlement over and over without significant cost. This really, really encourages you to use a whole host of different city-states and unique infrastructure from civs to build different types of unique infrastructure. It now makes much more sense to have one of each improvement in every town and to have lots of different ones to put down rather than spamming the same thing over and over. Personally, whilst I think this needs balancing, I think this is a huge improvement and really rewards people for interacting with the different systems. A change that I don't know if I am as happy with is settlement limit. You'll notice a slight tweak to this box. -5 happiness in all settlements per settlement over the limit is exactly the same. However, there is a line missing, capped at -35. There is now no cap for being over the settlement limit. So, in previous editions, if you were 7 settlements over the limit, you would hit -35 happiness in all settlements, and that would be it. If you could somehow make your settlements 35 happy, it didn't matter how far over the settlement cap you went. They could only get so unhappy, and you could just ignore settlement limit. Now, that cap is, well, endless. It can go to -50, -60, -100 happiness if you kept going over it, and I think it makes victories such as military much, much harder. It encourages you to trade for economic rather than owning all the resources yourself. It makes you really likely to raise settlements that you conquer if they're not useful for you, and it stops you from just settling pointlessly on land if it's not really worth it. In addition to this, happiness is now absolutely brutal. Unhappiness now gives you a -5% penalty to all local yields rather than a -2% penalty capped at 80%. So this settlement with -22 happiness is down to 20% of its yields and is basically doing nothing for my empire at all. It's really poor. So unhappiness kicks in much harder and much more ferociously. Combine that with the changes to specialists, which are now even more draining of happiness, and you will find managing specialists and managing settlement limit much more important. All in all, these changes combined mean that the game is pushing you into having a more condensed, more compact empire rather than just endlessly settling wide and wide and wide and wide and having settlements everywhere. Now, this feature workshop is available for anybody that owns Civ 7 to play for free, as long as you play on Steam. If you haven't given it a try yet and you own Civ 7, come along to my Discord. There's a link in the description of every video I put out. We have something like 200 keys left to give out, so please come and claim one if you'd like to have a go. There are so many changes here, they couldn't even make patch notes for them because it was just too comprehensive a list. I've only picked apart the main ones that make the biggest changes. But as I say, this has a lot of people excited. I want to know your thoughts. Let me know if you think these are in the right direction, and let me know if you've played the playtest, what else do you like that I haven't picked up in this video? Until then, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I think I might actually go and play some of this rather than just talking about it now. That sounds fun. And yes, as you can see, they put me in the game. That's clearly me. Either that or One Punch Man. I'm not sure. See you all next time. Goodbye. And finally, a very special shout out goes to Glorious Petra, Clibben Thurders, Poppy Dude, The Nickerman, Mushkin Mandletort, Matthew Wilkinson, Paul Coffey, Toon General, The Uncivil Engineer, Radiatore, Dayboy91, Dan Jamo, Slither Alley, Scott Stratton, Skeptical Bear, Cinnamon Beard, Private Selection, Genoa Salami, Callum Billy, Garrett Gowan, El Truant, Creston, RB Hedge, Burial, I'm Daft, Gooberman, Dr. Bobby, Mixomatosis, Indigenous 68, Teddy Zursa, Barnaby Rex, Charlie Bears, Nate the Great, Alex Frost, Mean Penguin, Interplanet Janet, Frankincense Battlezord, Geography Teacher, Juvara, Morax, Sinikush, Echo Bear, Legally Trash, Shadow of Gaia, Bob Tway, Abstract Fun, JB Genius, Arctic Fox. Thank you everyone for your support. Goodbye.